Welcome back to the Mastered in Macro series. Today I've got a video talking through adjusting your targets for strength and muscle. So we're going to be going into expectations, talking about calories, adjusting calories after following a diet for a bit, and we're going to talk about adjusting your macros, and I'm going to dive into a little bit of the extra details as well, and some common faults that we see. So first things first is to differentiate kind of between strength and hypertrophy or gaining muscle. Now, they're actually kind of two different things. You can get bigger without necessarily getting stronger, and you can also get stronger without necessarily getting bigger. Now, obviously, there's a massive overlap between this. Now, what we want to look at is what your primary goal is. Now, when we're thinking about kind of setting our diet up to get stronger and get bigger, we need to understand that it's a long process. It takes time. So I'm just going to make myself a little bit smaller here. And so here is Lyle McDonald, I think, put this one together in terms of rate of muscle gain in males. Now, you don't necessarily need to worry about this. What you probably need, why I put this table in here, is just to say that actually, if your training age is relatively, you're not a newbie, then muscle gain is unfortunately a very slow process. So you look, people that are thinking they can do 8-week cycle and then they can, gain a lot of muscle, 8-week diet, and then it's not going to happen. Like, it takes a lot of time to gain the right type of weight. So if you're a newbie, then that's where you can see kind of quite big results. Okay, so it's kind of like understanding where you're at on this kind of like a scale, and then it kind of helps you to set realistic expectations. Now, this is just generalized. Now, years of proper training. So if you've been doing cycling, for a while, and then you want to come back into the CrossFit gym, or you're doing a little bit more resistance training or whatever, then you might get these like kind of newbie gains because you haven't necessarily been doing the correct stimulus. So just to let you know that, look, unfortunately, it's a long process. So when we're adjusting our diet, we understand that we're probably playing a long game here. Okay, and just to kind of highlight here how little actually hypertrophy plays in terms of kind of increasing strength. However, when you get, at the start, doesn't really. It's about, power output, coordination, motor unit recruitment, but actually then as we kind of come into it, it does kind of, play a little bit more of a role. So it's about kind of assessing what you want. Do you want to get stronger and maintain your weight? Do you want to get bigger? And that's the kind of biggest thing. So the thing is, that's where we need to track. Okay, you need to track things to be aware of where you're going wrong and where you need to make some changes. Because if you come to me and go, Liam, I've been following the diet for 6 weeks and I need to make a change. I'm like, cool, how's training going? Don't know, yeah, it's all right. Okay, what's your weight like? Don't know, I haven't weighed myself for 6 weeks. Well, how's your body composition? How's your clothes fit? How's your energy? How's your recovery? How's your sleep? I don't know. Yeah, it's all right. It was all right yesterday. You need to track. Okay, track your training, track your energy, track PBs, recovery, mood, how do your clothes fit. I don't really mind what you do, but you got to track something to have something to work off of. Okay, so it doesn't always have to be weight. Okay, if you're tracking strength, and how are you training? Are you training well? Are you training good? And then if it's actually pure muscle and you want to put on a bit of size, then you probably need to be tracking weight and body composition. So you need to be tracking something, because if you don't know, how do you know what needs adjusting? Key element. So the first time that you're following our 6 week, one of our diets, you need to follow the 6 week cycle. Commit to the process. Okay, because there's no point talking about adjustments if we haven't committed to it. And we spoke about this before, but it's a good recap. The first week is just transition. Okay, you might feel that you put on a little bit of weight. You might feel that a little bit heavier. You might feel like it's too much food. Okay, so you need to just be aware that this first week is just a bit of transition. Okay, so then second week, third week, these are the first kind of true weeks, and then we can start to make adjustments. Now, the reason I brought this up is because this is how I want you to kind of follow anything. This is adjustments not just after one diet. This is adjustments kind of going forward. And every single time that you do this and adjust your calorie target, or the one that you're following your goal, you need to be following this process. Okay, follow the first 4 weeks. And make that commitment to that, and then you can be thinking about 5 and 6. Where do I need to go? Do I need to commit to either way? And that's where you can be. But I don't really, when we're not in the kind of like ultra kind of like finite bodybuilding kind of on prep stage dietary support, So we want to be thinking about keeping things simple, and that's why we have 1 calorie target that just kind of like, slightly adjusts over the month. We don't necessarily change everything every day. High carb days, low carb days, rest day is way too confusing. You want to be consistent. Okay, so we have 1 target for 4 weeks, then we change it in the second, the second half, where this is second phase, which 5 and 6. Every single time, follow this process. Commit. You need to commit. Otherwise, if you just kind of change things too early, you're never going to make progress, because you're going to kind of constantly be doing. That's when you can get into that yo-yo dieting. First things first. So once you've followed your diet, how do you adjust your calories? Okay, so we want to be re-entering your weight and training and steps, etc., and then choose 1 goal above or below. And I'm going to show you the template in a minute. That is a small adjustment. Now we work off probably 120 to 150 calories each goal. Okay, so when you kind of depending on what you need to focus on, you need to go 1 above or below. You're going too aggressive, we just find that it works okay in some cases, but on the majority it's just not really something that we advocate, and it's just a bit too much of a shift. But this is based on weight trend, energy training, all of these things that I told you to track. Okay, so look, let's take a look. I'm just going to bring up the template here in terms of what you should be doing. So in terms of calories, I'm going to talk about if you haven't lost weight, or if you have lost weight, but this is where you can adjust. So if you've been following lean gains, that's your first target, because you come off of a fat loss diet and you felt good. You've been kind of feeling like you need a little bit more food, and training energy, a little bit low, and I put on a tiny bit of weight, but actually I want to accelerate that, then go up to muscle gain gradual. Okay, as you can see here, if I go gradual, it's 2,308, when we go up, so you see about 150 calories per goal. Okay, so all you need to do is make that adjustment. We've made it really simple for you. Just simply change that goal. Okay, but how much? What do we need to go up, or when do we go down? Okay, if you haven't gained weight or strength, be honest. Have you actually been following the calories on average, or have you just been kind of following it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and then the rest of the time I was a little bit worried about eating too much on my rest day? I didn't want to eat that much because I felt really full. Have you been following a caloric intake that is matching what we've set? Have you been in a surplus? Have you been consistent with your meal timings? That's the key thing. If you haven't, what do you need to talk about adjusting? You just need to be consistent and follow it. Okay? So make sure that you're doing that. Okay? And that's the key thing. The next thing, have you been worried about putting on a little bit of fat and not being consistent? That's very, very, very common, guys. Very, very common. And this is where a lot of people fail in terms of gaining the right type of weight and strength, because like I said, it's a long process, it takes a while. And then we get caught in this kind of grey zone. I'm normally camped out here. I'll be happy to admit. So we normally be thinking about, right, I want to increase my strength, increase my muscle, but actually I'm actually too worried about body composition. I end up kind of just focusing on that. So although my training is going really, really well, I end up changing my diet because I want to focus on getting a little bit leaner, or keeping my abs, and my lower ab, and I've got this little bit of bum bag starting to kind of occur on my stomach. And you don't then commit, and then what happens is you get caught in this grey zone of kind of not doing much, and you just see this plateau, stagnation, whatever you want to call it. So you've got to commit. Okay, now this isn't really about adjustment, but it's just a really kind of good graph about the study that they put people into an aggressive aggressive bulk, so aggressive surplus, or a lean, and then you can see here that the person, the people that followed something more, they gained more muscle, happy days, but they also gained a little bit more fat. So if you put it into, this is more of a very, very similar to our gradual, the calorie surplus that they put them in, and this is obviously more in line with our aggressive. So again, if you want to be, I don't really care about putting on a bit of body fat because I just need to be getting stronger overall, might literally just want to be weightlifting and just putting on more weight on the bar, then go aggressive. This is your primary goal. But if you're like, okay, I just want to kind of get a bit stronger and put on a little bit of muscle, then I'd probably say gradual or moderate is the way you need to go forward. Okay, so and it's the length of time that you need to be following that. You can aggressively bulk in a relatively short amount of time, but you have to understand that it's going to be a little bit of body fat with that. And that's the key. And that's where people get wrong. They start to kind of see, yeah, I've got loads of energy, but I'm feeling a little bit fluffy here. So I'll drop down, and then they don't end up doing anything. They go below this, so then, like you say, no muscles gained. So that's the key in terms of if you haven't gained weight. And the thing is, it's mostly down to, like, you haven't eaten enough consistently. You haven't probably trained in the correct way consistently. And you maybe haven't eaten enough protein, and carbohydrates is probably the one that you haven't eaten enough. They're the key things. If you haven't kind of gained, or you haven't kind of seen strength, improvements, it's really, really crucial. Like, training stimulus is super important. So you need to adjust your calories to this. So if you haven't done it, then be honest, and you might want to just follow the same target. If you have been doing it, if you really have been kind of consistent, then go up. Choose the target above, because you're probably at a maintenance. That's your maintenance. Now, these formulas and everything that we calculate are just there for a starting point, as we talked about in video 1. But you need to be, addressing it to your current output and what your body is telling you. So if you are saying, I'm not gaining weight, but I'm hungry all the time, and my training is just kind of plateaued, then these are clear signs that you need to increase your intake. So don't be scared. Go into moderate, or and if you're on moderate, go to aggressive. And maybe you haven't slept enough. Because if you haven't slept enough, all of this becomes a little bit of a moot point. So you make sure that you're doing everything. Okay, strength and gain, muscle gain is a very multifactorial process. So as long as we have all of our ducks in line, then we're going to be good. But make that adjustment. I hope that helps in terms of adjusting your calories if you haven't made progress. Just saying. And what if you gain strength? What if you gain weight? The right way. I'm feeling really good, Liam. I've followed 6 weeks. Like, what do I do now? Okay, well, you can just repeat that 6-week cycle. Follow the same target. You're making progress and everything's good and happy days. Then why do you need to change? Keep that upward progression. Keep that forward momentum. We put 6-week cycles to hopefully allow you to kind of block it around your training. You might want to kind of have a deload week. You might want to extend certain periods. But this is how we find that it works really, really well, because it's a nice, clear structure, and you can just repeat that. Enter in your new weight. It might just adjust your calories very, very slightly, but you can repeat the same week cycle. Okay, or you're like, actually, there were times I was just starting to feel that hunger, just starting to feel that little bit of fatigue, and then you might want to just kind of be proactive with it and bump it up. But again, only one above. But again, we talked about fat gain, or whatever, gain too much fat also. Again, don't get caught in the grey zone, okay? Primary goal. This is the key thing. If your goal is to just perform and get stronger, then you're going through periods over the year where you really want to be focusing on getting stronger and putting on that muscle mass, then yeah, you might kind of get a little bit of fat. But if you do it at the correct time, that's not going to impact anything else, okay? You've got to have periods where you're going to commit for more than 6 weeks, okay? However, if you put on a lot, if you've gone aggressive and you put on a little bit of fat, then you can choose the lower target, and kind of repeat the cycle. But be wary, we don't want to get into that yo-yo dieting. Okay, look, obviously I'm here to help you personalize something. Okay, but I would be very, very, very few circumstances where I would suggest that you kind of choose that lower target. I'd probably say what you need to do is commit to the same target again. Follow that, and what your body would do is your metabolism will come up, your training energy will stay high, and then you would start to lean out a little bit because you were going to gain more muscle mass, your metabolism is going to go up, your training performance is going to go up. Things take a while to actualize, so I definitely think that you should do that. However, if you have just chucked on a load of body fat, then yeah, you might want to choose a lower target because it was way too much. That was too many calories for you. So then you can just adjust it down and still make progress in terms of that lean muscle, okay? But you got to remember the long-term focus is strength, okay? With very short periods of fat loss and body composition. So you could go in to a 1 to 2 week calorie deficit and then repeat that strength focus, okay? So you can just kind of lean out a little bit. You might want to drop into a slight deficit using the template. And then just do that for 1 to 2 weeks, or maybe even 10 days. Like, you'll be surprised at how quickly you can lose weight if you're consistent. Gaining strength and building muscle is a lot harder. So that's what I would do, because you need to make sure that you're fueling the tank. Okay. Look, it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's a very long-term process, but you got to be making sure that you kind of committing to that. So that's how I want you to be thinking about doing that small adjustment in terms of caloric intake. If you haven't made weight, if you haven't gained weight, then making sure that you're just going above and above. And if you have made progress, then look at your primary goal. If you put on too much body fat, then you can either kind of just drop to one below that, or do a very, very short cut afterwards. Okay, but short. That's the key. Now, talking about macros, we'll talk about calories. Now, let's talk about macros. So, reasons to adjust protein. Okay, so as we start to increase our intake, protein can be a little bit higher, and it can cause digestive issues. It can be even struggling to hit targets. Okay, I'm going to just talk through the template in a minute around adjusting your protein targets based off of your carb intake. Okay, well, reasons to adjust, protein is because you maybe want to bump it up a little bit because you're really hungry. And this is something that we commonly see with people that are kind of around that lean gains, muscle gain gradual. So you might want to kind of just adjust the percentages then. Okay, so we start with 25%, but you might want to bump that to 28%, to 30%, and see how you feel. Look, the reason what you're not making progress is probably not down to protein. It's probably down to carbohydrates, if I'm honest. So you probably don't need to eat more protein. You probably just need to eat more carbohydrates. Reasons to adjust carbs down. Okay, obviously the biggest thing is just kind of calories. To adjust calories, if you're going to be dropping things down, you need to be making sure that you're adjusting your carbs as well. But that could be down to preference. You follow the 6-week cycle and you're like, man, this is a lot of carbohydrates. Actually, I was always kind of under my carbs and over on my fats, but I'm still making progress. So you might want to adjust that to bring it in line with your personal preference. Actually, enjoy a little bit more fattier foods, but you need to adjust so you're not putting on too much body fat. And then your training might change. You might be doing a little bit more, chucking in a little bit more kind of concurrent training in there. So you're doing a little bit more kind of aerobic, work, a little bit low and slow. And that means that you might want to kind of just necessarily, need as many carbohydrates because you're not trying to, gain muscle. You're not doing so much kind of high intensity work. So, this can be adjusted based on training performance, training, output. And the reasons to adjust carbs up, if you're really lacking energy, guys, so this is the big thing, okay? And it's common, so common to be scared of carbohydrates and the amounts that you need to eat to get stronger and fuel the tank and put on a little bit of muscle mass. It's really hard, but you'll start to find that energy levels are really low in training, or if you start to come toward the end of the diet or end of a training cycle and you're really beat up, make sure that you try to be thinking about, right, next time I'm going to go around this and adjust this, I might want to actually take my carbs up to 45% to 50% and drop my fats down and see how you get on with that. So, that's definitely something to help align with your training. And look, if your sex drive is, lower than a snake's belly, then, you need to be making sure that you're eating enough. And if you're not eating enough carbohydrates, although people talk about fats, which do have a beneficial effect in terms of sex hormones, if you're not eating enough carbs, then your body's got to find energy from somewhere. And this can be a massive effect on terms of hormones because you've got too much cortisol, which kind of robs testosterone, and then all of a sudden, everything's all over the place. So making sure that you're kind of doing that. And for women as well, like cortisol will still, all of the good stuff that we need to make anabolic hormones, estrogen, progesterone. So you're gonna be fighting an uphill battle. Okay, so get the carbs in. And look, if you're really hungry, get the carbs in. We talk about protein and fats being satiated in nutrients, but actually carbohydrates for me, they're so good. And you can eat more potatoes, you can eat more veg, eat more volume. All of a sudden, it's a nicer meal to eat. The reasons to adjust fats down is it's just an easy adjustment in terms of the size of the meals and the calories. Okay, a tablespoon of olive oil, boom, that's 120 calories. Just easily drop out my salmon for a whitefish, my beef for a lean chicken, or whatever. Happy days, really easy. Okay, so that's the kind of key thing. Sometimes we find when people with higher fat intakes have digestive issues, and we talk about kind of demonizing carbs for causing bloating, etc. But actually, we find that oils and these types of things, especially when they're mixed with higher amounts, higher calorie intakes, that they can cause digestive issues. And again, talking about changing your training. If you're doing a little bit more, different training that is kind of more aerobic, like maybe a little bit slower, lower, in terms of intensity, and then you might want to adjust your fats and see how you're going. But if like we talked about, but if you're increasing the intensity. You might want to just take the fats down because carbohydrates, you need to get a little bit more in, and we know that we need that calorie balance. So look, the reason to adjust fats up is that if the carbs are at your highest amount, okay, that's the key thing. If you've maxed your carbs out and you need to increase your calories, that's when I'm going to increase your fats. And again, easy adjustment in terms of size meals, sex, morning, low, and look, it's preference. It's personal preference in terms of the carbs and fats for me, but I want you to edge on the side of more carbs because they've been shown to help, more beneficial in terms of building muscle and gaining strength. So look, I'm just going to talk about how to do this with the template quickly. So when we're talking about macros, okay, obviously we've set here, the targets. So if you can come down and use this, drop down menu here. So, you follow the four-week cycle here, you increase to, 5 and 6. And now you're talking about adjustment. Now, what do I do? So you change the calorie target, you've gone up to moderate. Perfect. I'm going to keep that 25%. But actually, do you know what? I felt like I could eat. I was over my carbs and I felt like I could eat a little bit more. So you might want to kind of go 50% and 25. And then just get that up a little bit more. And then just keep that there. To make sure that you've got 2 weeks with slightly higher fat and see how you get on. As carbs go up, protein can come down because carbs are protein sparing, okay? However, we don't necessarily probably want to go lower than 20%, okay? So you look at 20%, that's about 2 grams per kilo per body weight, okay? So that's a good thing at the moment for the amount of calories that we're eating. So I would just suggest that should be your limit, okay? For setting your diet up, but you can play around with it. Okay, we don't want to be thinking about adjusting our protein too much, but as our calorie intake goes higher, we want to be thinking about keeping our protein around 2 grams, 1.8 to 2 grams per kilo per body weight. Okay, so if you were going to go kind of 35% here. As when you're in a deficit, when you're kind of going lower, then we want to maintain a higher protein intake because it's easier to cut calories from carbs and fats. That's the most beneficial thing. However, when we got a higher intake here, say we're going like this, all of a sudden 215 grams of protein, that is a lot of protein to hit when you're this weight. So it's also going to impact your energy levels and your recovery because it's very hard to eat that much protein, and we don't necessarily need it up around kind of 3 grams, 3.2 grams. It's a lot. So as calorie intake gets higher, protein intake probably needs to go a little bit lower and carbs go up. That's the key thing in terms of manipulating macros for muscle and strength. But look, this is personalization. It's about commitment and see how you get on. And that's why we use a template, so it allows you that customization. Yep, good. So, last thing is a little bit of a recap. Just in terms of, there's a 6-split block for a reason. Now it allows you to program this around your training. It allows you to kind of have that did I feel better at the higher intake there? Or can I just actually make that adjustment for 2 weeks, and see how I get on? And it gives you structure rather than just being like, this is just a never ending thing. You can adjust after 6 weeks, but you've got to commit. And you've got to track something, whether it's strength, you're focusing on performance, whether it's hypertrophy and muscle gain, then you've got to track weight, body composition. You've got to track something so you can be aware of what needs to be adjusted. And then we make small changes. We use the calorie goals that we've already set for you, making it super easy, no calorie math or anything like that, and make one or below, one above, one or below, okay? But then calories are for body composition, macros are performance. So remember, adjusting your macros for the type of training that you're doing and personal preference. But you've got to be thinking about, what am I doing? What is the energy system that I'm working on? And how can I set my diet up to achieve this? And for me, this is where you're going to be. If you're wanting to gain muscle and you're wanting to get stronger, you're going to just have to eat the carbohydrates. It's just been shown again and again to be very beneficial. But macros are performance, calories for body composition. Awesome stuff, team. We have got the last video in this series, part 3, which is going to be covering kind of nutrient timing, meal structure, and all those amazing things. But thanks for watching. Any questions, just let me know.